Okay, so this is Windows 10 technical preview as of build 10061. This build was just released a few days ago. There may be some changes to the way that it looks, but I would expect them to be minor. I think that when it's released in July is what I've heard, that it will look more or less the same as it looks right now. This desktop background, however, is not native to Windows. It's one of my own. So when you install it, upgrade to it, it's not going to look exactly like that with the desktop background and so forth. One of the complaints that people in Windows 8 had was that they got rid of the Start menu, and that is back. This is not the default size of the Start screen, however, and the Start menu. The default size is reduced. It's, I had to click the restore down. This is the default size. They've added width to this in this most recent build, 10061. Originally, up until now, the default size for this window, the start window here, was only to the left of where my mouse cursor is right now. So everything to the right of my mouse cursor and everything to the right of that partition that my mouse cursor's hovering over has been added. Now the advantage to adding that extra width obviously is that you don't have to scroll down so far if you have a lot of app tiles in your start menu here. And obviously what used to be an older version in older versions of Windows, all programs is now called all apps, but the feature's the same. And the way that it works is the same. You have all of your programs that you have installed in this list. They're done by in alphabetical order here, and you just scroll down to find what you want that way. There are two ways to get to the Settings app. One is to click here, where you see my mouse cursor hovering. The other is to go down to the bottom right hand corner of the screen to the little notification area icon for your notifications and give a single left click, and that opens up this bar to the side that will tell you any notifications that you have for any of your apps or for the system. Notifications will pop up down here at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can click them, and if they're related to an app giving you, say, a weather alert, and you click on that, it will launch the app and give you more information, and you can deal with all of that within the app. And likewise for the system. So if the system needs you to re-enter your credentials for your account or something like that, and it pops up down there at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and you click that, it will launch the Settings app here, and it'll go into automatically launch this in the accounts part of it, and you would just enter in your login details. This is also where you will choose to either have a local account or link to a Microsoft account, and that depends on what it is that you're wanting to do with the operating system and how much of the cloud features and things like that you would want to use in Microsoft's Windows 10. In the Settings app here, you obviously have your account settings. You can change your account picture. You can link to a Microsoft account and so forth. You also have your personalization options. You can control your network and internet settings. Which of your you can see I have two choices here for which Wi-Fi network I'm connected to. You change all of those things in that. Your devices and so on. You can control this way as well. And then that's also how you would update your system, and you see me doing this now. It comes in, check for updates, tells you when the last you updated it was. I'm going to go ahead and, since I'm in here, check for updates. Most of the time it seems as though it only wants to update Windows Defender. It seems like it will update Windows Defender every 10 minutes if you let it. But you generally won't see too many updates to your system. Any updates to any apps you have, you'll do through the Windows Store app. Updates to apps don't happen through here. This is only for Windows updates. And then you'll see that it's also installing that app. When this gets done, I'm going to show you. In fact, I may be able to do it anyway. Yeah, I can. Under personalization, obviously you can change your background picture. But what's interesting about this is the color of your taskbar down here at the bottom and the color of your start screen. Let me maximize that because I prefer it to be maximized so that I don't have to go and scroll down all that much. The color that you see, the system themes color, whatever you want to call that, system theme, the system color, whatever, you can choose to either have it be one of your choosing that you select here, or you can have it automatically pick a color from your background like it has here done. And I personally like to have it kind of blended with the background, so I've left it so that it automatically chooses a color from the background. You can choose to show the color on your taskbar and start menu. If you take the color off so that you're not having that feature, you're not having any color at all, it defaults to black, so black is default. I don't like black coloring on all of that. You can see how some of your tiles and icons and things will actually blend in a little too well to it, so I don't like having it be black. And then you can also change to either have it be transparent or not have it be transparent. In the case of it being off, you'll notice you don't see the desktop background behind, whereas if I have it transparent, you will see the desktop background, but you will not see any apps or programs or anything running. You will only see the desktop background, and I prefer to leave it like this, personally. It's a matter of preference. And we can we can see if it's done updating. Yes, it's done updating. Regarding your app tiles, you can unpin them. You can pin them to taskbar, which means that they will be down here at the bottom of the screen in the taskbar. You can resize them. That's a small tile here, medium tile, and a wide tile. I try to organize them by this is again a matter of personal preference, but you can organize them, and I tend to organize mine, as you can see, by commonality. So for example, all of my Microsoft apps and system-related apps are going to go there. All of my weather apps go in another place, news in another, and so on. You can organize them by dragging and dropping according to how you want them, and you can, as you see it changing, that gives you an idea of where it's going to be placed. You can obviously change the heading of your group. You can choose to not have any heading or title at all, but Microsoft Multimedia Apps, Netflix, videos, music. I don't remember what I had titled it initially, but you could change that. The size of the tile is going to depend in some apps upon how much information you're wanting that app to show you at a glance. So for example, this large tile here for my Windows weather app, if I have it as a large tile, will give me the current conditions. If I change that size to a medium tile or a small tile, I only get a logo, and I can do that. And you can see that it changes, and I don't see that information if I resize it. So if I have it as a large tile, eventually, it takes it a second, but eventually it will pull that information in. Microsoft is changing their apps somewhat. Um, this looks quite a bit different from how this app looked prior to this most recent release of, or most recent build, I should say, of Windows 10. So some things that you see in apps now will change. This is much better. I don't expect any changes for the worse. I love this graph here. So it's adding features that I like. It's not changing things so that I don't like them. But so some of this will look different. That's why I'm not going to get too much into the apps and what they look like and so on. This goes back to how you would update your apps. I said you would do it to the Windows Store. There's a beta app for the Windows Store, so it's entirely possible that this will change, but at the moment this is the Store app, and you would just go into your settings, app updates. You always want to sync your licenses, because sometimes if you don't, you won't see all of the updates, and then you just check for updates. This bar up here, and none of these are gonna, none of those will actually update. Those don't update until you get the new release. This bar up here for some apps, as you can imagine, if you were using the Netflix app and you want the full screen, you're not going to want your taskbar down here to be showing, and you're not going to want this clunky bar up here because it's going to interfere with your experience. You're going to want it to be full screen with the only thing that you see on your screen being the video that you're trying to watch. In order to get rid of that big bar and simultaneously get rid of the taskbar at the bottom of the screen, you're going to click this expand icon that you see my mouse cursor hovering over. Look at the top right of your screen. I have to allow for some lag because I've been having problems with my video and audio syncing properly. But you can see where my cursor's hovering. You would click that. That is different from the restore button. The restore button will just reduce the size of this window. Restoring out or maximizing will increase the size of the window. This actually, clicking that, makes it be a full screen app. And in order to get rid of that function and get the bar back and also get your taskbar back, you go to the middle here where you see my mouse cursor hovering, and you give a single left click, and it restores it back to the way that it was, with the bar up top and your taskbar down here at the bottom. As you can see, you can also have this restored to a full screen window too. The default is like this, and I think I touched on that. I've done so many of these videos and so many of them have failed that I can't even remember now at this point what I've talked about in this video and what I haven't. I didn't mean to launch that. So I'm not going to get too much into apps. One app I will touch on, though, is the Contact Support app, and that makes it very easy to get in touch with Microsoft's technical support. You can actually do an instant message chat, or a voice chat, I think, even. Eventually you'll be able to do. And I haven't played around with this too much because I don't need technical support, and I don't want to mess anything up, and so on. But it will make it very easy for people that need to get in touch with technical support to get in touch with technical support. You'll be able to do chats and so on with technical support through this app. So that's I believe that's a new feature to Windows 10. I don't think that I don't think Windows 8 has it. I know Windows 7 doesn't have it. So that's incredibly helpful. I don't think that there's really much more to talk about as far as this goes. I think that that's pretty straightforward, even though it may look different from the way that Windows 8 did things, and I know it certainly looks different from the way that Windows 7 did things. It's fairly intuitive. You're going to be able to. It's in other words, it's not so different that you're not going to be able to figure that out. Obviously, you click on your username to get to your account settings. You can go through the settings app. Again, you can click there. You can come down here to notifications and get to it through here. So you can see where my mouse cursor is. There's more than one way to get to that, and you can get to your account settings that way. But that's fairly intuitive. Your power settings are right there. That's straightforward. New features to Windows, things that people in Windows 8 haven't seen, things that obviously people in Windows 7 haven't seen. Cortana, that's something that has been on the Windows Phone operating systems, I believe, but it's new to Windows 8. And to give you a sample of Cortana, I'm going to open it. Well, no, let's do this. Let's do it this way. Hey Cortana, who was the 30th President of the United States? Also happens to be one of my favorite presidents. Maybe my favorite president. Certainly my favorite president of the 20th century. And you can see how Cortana works as far as that. You can also type that in. You would launch by clicking down here. The default for that, I have it set as an icon, but the default would be a search box. So when you first upgrade or install Windows 10, you'll see a search box down there. I don't like that. I think it takes up too much space for a feature that you're not going to be using all that much. So I click the icon, and you can also type 30th, and it will search as you type, and you can see there. And you also have the option to search native to your computer, your local files and settings and so on. In other words, for things that you're typing as well. So they're basically tying in the Cortana feature with the Windows search feature that you've had going back quite a ways. For quite a number of operating systems, they've built up. They're merging those features together. The one thing I don't like about Cortana is what Cortana will tend to do is search for the term and open it in an external browser, whatever your default browser happens to be. I don't like the fact that it keeps wanting to throw to an external program. I would rather Cortana search and display the results of the search and so forth inside this window here. And if you're wondering about the name, that's because I have my computer thing. If you see my lock screen and so on, it's all themed Doctor Who. So that's what this is, but your name would go in here. I would rather it search and display the results of a search in this window here, rather than throw to an external browser. This is a good example of when you see a notification pop up, you click it, it launches whatever the app pertaining to the notification is for you to handle it, to deal with it, or what have you. So that's a good, that I'm glad that happened, so that I can actually show you how that function works. And then you would just open it up, and in that case it told me the oil was ready to be, in that case it told me that the oil was ready to be collected, so I just clicked the notification, it launched the app, and I did what it told me to do. Straightforward. But back to Cortana, I would prefer for that to search and display in this window. That may end up happening at some point. I kind of feel like that's probably where they're going to take it. But at the moment, it wants to throw to an external browser. Regarding browsers, this is Microsoft's new browser. Currently, with Windows 10, you will have Internet Explorer alongside what's at this point being called Project Spartan. Project Spartan may end up going by a different name once it's in its final release. But right now, the new browser is called Project Spartan, and you will have Project Spartan alongside Internet Explorer. I think that the plan is to phase Internet Explorer out entirely and just have Project Spartan. But Project Spartan right now is in very, very early stages. And it has some cool features to it that will be useful to a lot of people, though not necessarily everyone. And in order to show that, I will go up here into my address/search bar. Come on. Double clicking sometimes won't highlight everything, and other times it will. It's a little temperamental still, but again, it's in its early stages, so we're going to type in, already got Wikipedia. And this is a page I was looking at earlier to demonstrate this feature, so we'll just go back. So imagine that you're working on anything that you would be doing in a web page. It could be an encyclopedia article like this. It could be anything on the internet that you're looking at in your browser. And this is going to be particularly useful for students. I can see right off the top of my head. You know, you've got a study group, and you're wanting to collaborate with your study group or with your professor. Maybe you have a question or a suggestion, or who knows. You go up here to the top right, you see where my mouse cursor is hovering, and you see the tooltip says make a web note. You will give a single left click, and then you see this bar pop up at the top. Nice purple bar. In this case, I have the pen feature, or the paintbrush feature, whatever you want to call it. And the little arrow at the bottom right hand corner means that once you've selected that there's more options. So you would want to give another left click, and then you can choose your colors and the size of the pen. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it with the medium sized pen, and I'll leave that color. I can draw. Okay, draw. I can also go here and go to a highlighter. I give another click. I'm going to leave it basic yellow. I'm going to stay with, well, let's use the large one. So let's see what the large one looks like. Okay. I can highlight. Okay, so I can come in here. I can highlight her date of birth. Maybe that's important. Maybe I want my study group or my students or whoever to see that. I can come down here and I can say, okay, she was born in, automatically scrolled on me. Well, I can just come down here and I can I'm having a hard time getting that to just undo one thing. But anyway, you can see what I'm getting at. You can highlight and so on. The other thing you can do is you can actually do a text, a text note, a typed note. So I'm going to do that here. And it pops up with a little arrow, and you can drag that. You can click and drag that. Again, it's not quite as precise as I would like it, but that may change. I don't know. And if you click on that again, you get another one. You can just click the trash and it'll go away. But drag that. Come on. Anyway, I'm not going to waste time on that. And I click that, and then I can do, let's say I'm a teacher. And I'm doing this for a class. And I enter that in. Okay, so you see these notes pop up that I can leave. And then what you can do is you can either take this as a screenshot, or you can add it into your favorites and so on in your browser. The other thing that you can do, and this is an extremely useful feature, is you can click and you can share it on OneNote. Now what this allows you to do is on OneNote, not only can you make additional changes to the notes and so on in that in OneNote, which I can launch the OneNote app, I think, and show you. it's going to take it a second to actually launch. But you can organize your notes and so on. And what this will allow you to do is you will be able to share the web page, the notes and things that you've taken on the web page onto the cloud, which means that you can share this with people in your study group if you're a student, or with your students if you're a teacher, or with your teacher if you're a student, with your with other people in your company, whatever. And all of that can be done on the web page and all done online. There's nothing that you don't have to print something out, make a change to a physical copy, scan something in, email it as an attachment, or any of those kinds of things. You could do this all within the browser. And because it's linked to OneNote, you don't even have to necessarily open up the OneNote app on its own. So that's a hugely useful feature. That's a very, very cool thing that they've added in. And then the other thing too is that I believe, if they haven't done it yet, that they are going to be building Cortana into Spartan. I don't see any setting or anything like that, but I do know that that's something that's on its way. I was just reading about that in the last couple of days. So you will also have the Cortana feature that you saw me demonstrating here. You will also have that tied in with your browser as well, in Spartan anyway, not in Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer will be, I believe, phased out. I'm going to open up my file manager, which in Windows is called Explorer, but it's a file manager. I'm going to open up a couple of windows here of that, and I'm going to just pull them. While I've got these, in Windows 7, you could obviously snap these up to the top and get full screen. You could pull it down, and you could pull, and you could get a half screen this way, and you could do split screen. Guess what? And this is new. I don't think this even is the way things are done in Windows 8. You've had this feature in KDE for one, in distributions of Linux and desktop environments in distributions of Linux, but you haven't had this in Windows until now. And there's another thing that you haven't had in Windows until now that I'm actually getting ready to show you, which is the reason why I opened these to start with. But you can do quarters now, which I absolutely love, because let's say I've got Skype open and I have a chat window open and I'm doing a text chat in Skype. Well, what am I going to want to do? I'm going to want the contact list window here, and I'm going to want the actual chat window here. And maybe I want my web browser open here so that I can watch a YouTube video that the person in my chat window just sent me, and I can still see which contacts are online and going offline and so on, or I can click and I can actually take that link in the YouTube video and copy and paste it in my status to share it to everybody that way. They can see it in my status and they can click on it themselves and they can pull it up in their own browser. So I love the fact that they do the four-way snap feature now. I absolutely just I've loved that in Linux. I've always been, at least as long as I've been using Linux. I started using Linux in 2012. I've been prone to Linux. Windows with Windows 10, or I should say Microsoft with Windows 10, has impressed me a lot. That's one of the things that I'm favorably impressed by, is the fact that they have adopted some of the features that I really love and have in a lot of Linux distributions and in a lot of desktop environments in those distributions in Linux. The fact that Microsoft has adopted some of those is just it's a huge plus. It's huge points in Microsoft's favor. So I have these two windows open, and I'm just doing this as an example. You can it's like this with any window that you have opened. Um, it could be your browser and Skype. It could be two browsers. I mean, you see all the icons for browsers I have down here in my taskbar. It could be anything. It could be a Word document and a browser. It doesn't matter. But any windows that you have open, you're going to come down here to Task View. And I'm going to, again, because of lag, let my mouse cursor hover there for a second. You come down to the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, and you have Task View, and you're going to give a single left click. That's Task View. Now, this in and of itself isn't that new if you're pretty familiar with Windows and you're pretty familiar with Windows's shortcut keys. That would look familiar to you if you know about Alt-Tab. So I'm going to do Alt-Tab right now, which is just hold down the Alt key on your keyboard. And while holding down the Alt key on your keyboard, you just punch, press and release the Tab button. And you see Alt. That's the Alt-Tab feature. Okay? And I can tab through between the windows there. And if you notice the border, you'll just look right there. I'm going to hover my mouse cursor right there on the border. Watch the border. That's how you know which. You see that white line? That thin white border. That lets you know which is selected. That Alt-Tab feature has been in Windows going all the way back to Windows 7. I don't know if Windows XP had it or not, but I know Windows 7 did. I believe Windows Vista did even. And that's an old feature. What's different about Task View here is this, and this is again another feature that Windows has borrowed from Linux, and Mac may have it, but it's been years and years and years since I've used a Mac. I've used Apple IIs, Apple IIe's, the old 80s and early 90s Macintosh computers and that kind of thing, but I haven't used a Mac computer since I was 10 years old or whatever. But in other words, none of the new ones. I haven't used any MacBooks or anything like that. But I know that this feature existed in Linux and has existed in Linux for a long time across many different desktop environments. The virtual desktop. And it's finally in Microsoft's Windows. I love this feature. It helps to keep things organized, particularly if you are working with many different applications at the same time. You can spread things out across more than one virtual desktop and keep things organized and keep things from feeling cluttered. Okay, so you see these two windows open here. This is going to be important because you're going to need to know that those windows are open to be able to tell the difference between this desktop and the new virtual desktop that I'm going to create. So you come down here to the bottom right hand portion of the screen where my mouse cursor is. I'm going to let it hover, allow for lag, because I've been having a problem with that in these videos. So you see where my mouse cursor is. You're going to click New Desktop. And you see down here at the bottom center of the screen, Desktop 2. I'm just going to give a single left click, and I'm on Desktop 2. Now you notice those two windows are still open, but you don't see them here. That's because this is a virtual desktop. This is essentially a new desktop. It's virtual. And you can create many of these. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And so I can have a browser open in this. I can have a spreadsheet open in this. I can have a media player in this. I can have another spreadsheet in this. I can have a video game, a solitaire game, say, in this. I can have my task manager in this, so that I can check, the system load. I can have I don't know, photo editing software open here, and I can have nothing, say, open in Desktop 8 here. And I'm going to close these, And you can see it's just that simple. You come up to the top right hand and you see the X pop up and go away and go away and go away. And then okay, we've got this here. And then we've got desktop 1 here. And I'm going to get rid of desktop 2. And then we just have desktop 1. And we'll verify, yep, just desktop 1. So that's the 4-way snap feature. And and again, you still have half screen. And you still have, obviously, when you bring it straight up to the top, it'll go back to full screen. You still have all those features that you had in Windows 7, and I guess in Windows 8, but you now have the quarter snap, and I love that. That's a hugely useful feature for certain applications. I don't know what else there might be to go over. We've gone over that. We've gone over Cortana. We've gone over Task View. We've gone over Project Spartan. Oh, I do know one thing I need to talk about. I'm a Microsoft Windows Insider. Anybody can join the Windows Insider program, but most people probably wouldn't want to, because when you're upgrading your system to a technical preview, when you're testing beta software, sometimes alpha or even pre-alpha software, you're going to have bugs. You're going to have the potential that your system could crash. You're going to have the potential for lost data, and most people don't want to deal with that. But I'm a member of the Windows Insider program, and what I'm hearing from the Windows Insider program, not Windows Insider program, and from some of the industry publications, is that the target date for the final release of Windows 10 is going to be July, maybe end of July. So they're shooting for, by the end of July, releasing Windows 10. Here is the way that Microsoft is going to do the release of Windows 10. And I don't know how many people are aware of this, because again, I only know about it because I'm in the Windows 10 Insider program, or the Windows Insider program, and I'm testing Windows 10 and so on. So I don't know how widely known any of this is. If you are using Windows 7 or Windows 8, you can upgrade for free to Windows 10. But that offer is only for the first year after Windows 10's release. So let's say you're going to cling to your Windows 7 or your Windows 8, and Windows 10 is released in July of 2015, and August of 2016 you decide, I want to upgrade. Well, you're going to have to pay for it. But as long as you are a Windows 7 or Windows 8 user and you upgrade within the first year of Windows 10's release, you will get Windows 10 for free. So I would encourage all Windows 7 and Windows 8 users that have checked and made sure that their hardware can handle Windows 10, and if you're a Windows 8 user, your hardware will be able to handle Windows 10. The system demands and so on are comparable. In fact, I don't even think that there is a difference. Now, DirectX, what are we up to? 12. DirectX 12 has no greater hardware demands or anything than DirectX 11 did. So you're not going to need to go out and run and buy a new graphics card or something like that. You know, because, oh, well, I'm using Windows 8 and that's DirectX 11, and oh my God, what DirectX 12 is coming out. You don't have to worry about that. It's hardware requirements between 8 and 10 are going to be virtually identical. Okay, so Windows 7 users, because, you know, for example, I'm using Windows 10 now, but I upgraded directly from Windows 7. And my system the hardware and all on my system is from 2000, and I had it built in May of 2008. So I'm using 7, 8 year old um, hardware and 7 and 8 year old tech, because even though it was built in 2008, the actual hardware wasn't 2008. It was 2007, that kind of thing, when that was being turned out. It's processors and things from and form factors and all of that from 2007. So I'm using 7, 8 year old hardware. And that's Windows 7. So if you're a Windows 7 user, you're probably using older hardware. You're going to want to check and make sure that your hardware can handle Windows 10. If your hardware can handle Windows 10, I would say upgrade. If you're a Windows 7 or a Windows 8 user, absolutely upgrade. The fact that I was able to go from a used system on 7 and 8 year old hardware, Windows 7, skip over Windows 8, and go directly to Windows 10, and I had no problems. I didn't lose any data. I haven't had any problems with it crashing. I didn't get massive corruptions and so on of the system that made the system unusable or slow or anything like that. It is one of the things that has favorably impressed me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm inclined to recommend this, is because that's a good sign of the stability of the system and also the compatibility with the system across hardware types. It's if it could be run on 7 and 8 year old hardware, it's going to probably be able to run on anything newer, and that is a huge plus again for in Microsoft's favor, as far as my opinion of Microsoft is concerned, is the fact that it was so easy to upgrade and so stable and so reliable, and it didn't. Frankly, when I upgraded, I figured because I'm skipping Windows 8, and a lot of times when you upgrade, the way that it works is they build on previous versions. So if you're skipping an entire version, you may not have components for the new upgrade to build upon, which means that you're going to have bugs, you're going to have problems, and your system may crash. So I expected that it would crash. I fully expected that. Okay, I backed up all my stuff, which you should do too before you upgrade. Backed up everything, and I figured this isn't going to work, and I'm going to end up needing to get out my Windows 7 disk and start over from scratch and put Windows 7 back on. That didn't happen. It was a flawless upgrade. Hugely impressed in a favorable way by that. And that's one of the reasons why I recommend that you upgrade to Windows 10 if you're a Windows 7 or Windows 8 user. It's because as long as you do it within the first year, it isn't going to cost you anything. And there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to have any hassle with the upgrade. Still back up your data just to be safe. You should do that anyway. You should back up your data once a week or once a month or whatever. But I don't think that you're going to have any issues with crashing. I don't think that you're going to lose data or anything like that. I didn't, and I'm using 7 and 8 year old hardware, and I went from Windows 7 directly to Windows 10. No Windows 8 to Windows 10, where they're more similar. Windows 7 to Windows 10, and they couldn't be more different. So I'm favorably impressed by this. You can the way that the apps are structured, the fact that you can resize, you can name them, you can group them, and all of that is much better than the way that Windows 8 did it, where you had no start menu, and you had to go and scroll through screen after screen. You had that ridiculous charms bar, which made things confusing. You couldn't. It was difficult for me the few times that I used Windows 8 to figure out. And this was always on other people's computers because like I said, I didn't want to upgrade on mine. I didn't like it. But it was confusing to figure out. Okay, how do I get to control panel? How do I do this? How do I do that? What they've done is they've taken the good parts of Windows 8 and they have built on those, and they've improved those even more. The bad parts of Windows 8 they've scrapped. They've retained the good functions or good features rather from Windows 7, and they've pulled those into Windows 10. So it's not so different that users of Windows 7 or Windows 8 are going to be confused or have to, have a huge adjustment period. There's not really much of a learning curve there for even a Windows 7 user. Less so for a Windows 8 user that's used to using apps and using having the tiles and so forth. What Windows 8 users will be impressed by is the fact that it's much more user friendly. It's not so cumbersome to use. And when I say, what I mean by cumbersome, what I mean by difficult to use in the user experience is, why have 5 key clicks if one will do? Why have to scroll through 10 pages of stuff when you can just have everything on one page? They've taken that to heart, and they've built a much more streamlined, user-friendly, easy to use, intuitive system. The user interface is much more enjoyable to use than what I experienced using Windows 8 the few times that I used it. So I'm very impressed by Windows 10, and I recommend it highly. I really do. And that's coming from someone who's partial to Linux. That's coming from someone who's partial to an entirely different kernel, an entirely different, entirely different culture even in the free software movement than what you encounter with proprietary software and what you encounter with Microsoft. Microsoft in particular, but also Apple as well. So for me, as a Linux person who's partial to Linux, to recommend an operating system produced by a company that I, for years, have really disliked, tells you something about how good this operating system really is. And again, that's even before it's in final release. That's when it's still got some little rough edges and things that need to be hewn out. Some of the apps don't work. The Weather Channel app will. I've tried to launch that before I go to bed. I wake up the next day and it's still on the splash screen trying to load. Here's the Weather Channel app there that I'm hovering over. The AccuWeather app just below it here. That one, you'll see the splash screen you'll see for a split second, and then the app crashes, and I try to reload that, and it will not load. So yeah, there's some rough edges, but even with that, which I think that will get worked out, and some of that may be the result of using a used system, a Windows 7 install that I've been using for years, and upgrading directly to Windows 10. I think that part of it may be that we're still not in the final release. Windows 10's not the final release. It's still got some bugs and some kinks. That's probably part of it. Then I think the other part would be solved by starting with a fresh install of Windows 7. Back up all your data, and then blow it all away. What's on, back up in another location your data. Back it up to an external hard drive. Back it up onto another computer. Back it up using one of those cloud services, Mozy or whatever, and then get your Windows 7 install disk out, pop it in. You're going to reformat the drive. You're going to install a fresh copy. Install Windows 7 fresh, and then immediately after you install Windows 7 fresh, don't put any of your data back on. Don't put any programs or anything on. Immediately from your fresh install of Windows 7, go to Windows 10. I think that some of those problems would also be solved by that. As your system gets older in Windows 7, as any system gets older, you see registry flaws and things like that cause problems going forward, and then you go in and you're putting a new operating system, Windows 10. You're upgrading to that. You're putting a new operating system on, and you still have those flaws from the old system. I think some of it may be that. And again, even in spite of some of these minor issues, there's no core flaws in the system. There's no blue screens of death. There's no crashes. There's no loss of my data or any of those things that I expected. And in spite of the few minor things, it's been a really good operating system and a real pleasure to use. Very stable, fast. Again, even on 7-8 year old hardware. I'm not using a Core i7 or something. I've got a Intel Core 2 Quad, I think it is, or whatever. It's a Ford processor. A quad core, processor. It's a 2.4 gigahertz. I've got 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I've got a 1 gigabyte NVIDIA GeForce GT220 graphics card. Not one of those GTX monsters, that's got 2, 3, 4 gigabytes of memory and 80 billion, thousand, million, kajillion CUDA cores and this and that. Shader and all. I don't have super spiffy hardware, and it's still very fast and very reliable, and it works well and all of that. Very favorably impressed. I recommend it highly. I think I've pretty much covered everything that there is to cover, and I've given my recommendation, and I think I'm going to close out this video. Again, you can resize that. You can choose to have that be transparent or not. I've covered the settings app. I've covered Cortana. I've covered Spartan. All that. Yeah, that's basically all there is to cover. So I recommend Windows 10, and you get a good look at it from this video. Anybody has any questions? This isn't this video is not going to be posted to YouTube for the general public to see. It's only going to be sent to friends, family, that kind of thing. So anybody has any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. If you have a YouTube account, you can even comment on the video in YouTube if you want. You don't want to text me, you don't want to call me, you don't want to email me, whatever. Just comment in the YouTube video, and I'll answer whatever questions. If anything changes, and it's a major change, I'll do a follow-up video, and I'll also give another opinion on the changes. Because it's entirely possible if they really do something and screws things up, that my recommendation is going to go from being a highly recommend to a highly don't recommend. But I don't think that there's going to be any kind of major changes like that. I think that the way that it looks and the way that it functions is going to be mostly what it is right now, and there's only going to be going forward some improvements on Spartan to get it ready for final release. And I think there's going to be some stability improvements and things like that, like for example with the apps and the app container and all of what I was talking about the apps crashing. But I don't think there's going to be any huge user interface changes in the way that it looks and how you do things and that kind of thing. So what you're seeing right now and the way that you do things right now is probably going to be the way that it stays. Again, anything changes, I'll do a follow-up video, and I'll give my recommendations about how I feel regarding the changes. So anyway, that's Windows 10.